This is a Wheatstone / Audio Arts A50. It's a console that was designed and built in the New Bern facility, I believe, around 1990. All the documentation that I have dates to about 1992. This particular console came out of a news talk station. It was actually thrown in the dumpster. And I said, hey, I can probably use that. You can tell by the condition of the board it's been exceptionally well used. There's a lot of gunk and dirt. It wasn't taken very good care of. There's a couple of modifications here, some knobs that aren't original. The 6-source selector was set up for various things. Also, one of the problems with these boards is you'll notice these two boards are missing. There's this little switchboard that selects either program, addition, and telephone bus. There's also Q and AB. What's weird about these switches is they're latching. You can't get these switches anymore. You can get ones that are the same footprint and even the same cap size, but you can't get latching versions of these switches. So, seeing as how one of the boards is missing and half of the other ones either don't work or get stuck, whatever, we're going to have to make a little circuit board to replace all of these switches with some appropriate electronic switching logic to drive the signals internally. As I said, this unit is from about 1990. If you look at the date code on the fader, it says 44th week of 1990. And you look at some of the chips, and most of them have 1990 date codes as well, which means all the caps are also original and at this point pushing 30 years old. So the first thing we're going to have to do is pull this thing completely apart, get all the mothballs and coffee grains and Tic Tacs and whatever else is laying around in here out, blow it out, clean it, completely recap it, and might I add there's a whole bunch of caps in this sucker. Let's see, I think the output module, if I can get it to come out, I think I used this, yeah. You like that? Isn't that nice? And this is a push button panel they had for something. The internals are pretty dirty, and we've got, I don't know what this is all about, this burned up resistor business. There was another one in there that was like all burned up, so I don't know if that's something that went wrong in the power supply or what, but you can tell it's flamed out a couple of times because there's quite a bit of schnuck in there, and I think some of that's probably the heat from these output ICs, which are used to drive the headphones and I believe the Q speaker. But a lot of stuff is kind of unplugged. We've got some weird modifications going on here, and fortunately I have most of the schematics for this guy, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal to get it back and running again. You see here we got the switch cap completely came off. So it's going to take some work. The other thing too is I don't have a power supply for it. And per the book it needs, I think, plus and minus 18 volts and a +5 rail. +5 runs all the logic, all the lights, all that stuff. Plus and minus 18 is used to run the op amps and the analog rail and all that good stuff. And for some reason the timer's unplugged too, so I'm not sure what that's all about. So what I'm planning to do, let's see if I can do this without creating a huge mess. See, this is not really connected to anything anyway. I'll just move that out of the way. Just slide this down. You'll notice that underneath there's a fair amount of dead space in the back rail, and I'm thinking 3 little switching supplies will fit right in there. So all you have to do is stick like a little plate with a power con, and this thing should work just as good as it ever did. So anyway, I'll try and do some video updates on what's going on with this thing and what it looks like when we're all done. Here we have the motherboard for the Audio Arts or Wheatstone or whatever the hell it is this week A50 console. You'll notice it looks a little different. Every single one of those electrolytics has been changed. There are 160 of them. It took me 4.5 hours. But it's done. And my back is very, very sore. And I now need a new tip for my desoldering gun. I'm working on the meter bridge here. One of the problems with this particular console is most of the meter lamps are burned out. And what used to be in here was one of these little festoon type bulbs, like a dome light in a car really. These run on 5 volts. And there is another piece of the contact which used to look like this that I cut off with a large lineman's pliers. And so what I've done is I've tinned both sides of this and put LEDs and resistors. Here's one that's already done. You see how they're angled away so that they light the opposite side of the meter so it looks nice and evenly illuminated. And these are just white LEDs that I've sanded the tops off of, or just sanded them down so that they are a little bit more diffused. And there's just 1K resistors back there. And so when they're lit up, they actually look pretty good. Let me see if I can rig this up and show you what it looks like. So there's the LEDs lit, and if I flip the meter bridge over, maybe we won't short something out. But that's what they look like when they're lit. Looks pretty good, I'd have to say. Working on the Wheatstone A50 again. Got the power supplies installed, so we're getting ready to put the wiring in. Found out that this connector is bad because the little mating connector, you have to hold it in place with your finger for the connection to get through. But did get it lit up, and some of the logic works, and some of it's dependent on the bipolar supply, so it's not going to work right until we get all the voltages. So we'll see what happens. So for the first time in over a year, there's actually signal going through this board. Got it kind of running, and yes, there's actually stuff coming out of it. Got a new headphone jack installed. Obviously, got the power supplies put in as well. See if I can do this without knocking stuff over. Anyway, that seemed to be the easiest way. Just put the 3 switchers back there. And it just kind of comes around the corner, and it's just tack soldered into the input power connector. Not the prettiest job in the world, but as long as it doesn't break off, I guess I don't really care, because nobody's going to see it anyway. But you know, it's running, and these are important things. I tried to light up one of these channels, and the input chips were missing. And then the headphone output didn't work because this chip was missing because I pulled it, because for whatever reason they had like 2 of the legs like sky hooked into a ground connection for some reason. Not real sure why, but got kind of a mess going on down here too. But the console is working, and this is a good thing. As I mentioned before, this console was extremely well enjoyed, and as such there's a bunch of crap on the channel banks that we're going to have to clean off. Stickers and goo and finger schmutz and all kinds of other stuff. And also the faders are going to need to be cleaned and taken care of as well. As you can see, we got everything pulled apart, and we'll go through some of the rudimentary how you clean and polish and whatever else. Suffice to say, I'll show you how to take these faders apart without destroying them. So we had one minor fail with the ultrasonic clean machine. It worked for a couple of minutes and died. This is after the week and a half it took us to get it here. So I wound up having to scrub all the little knobs and buttons by myself, manually, anyway. Bummer. Time to keep working on this thing. It's been too long, and chop chop, Halloween's coming. Alright, so work continues on the console. I got like a 24-port Cat5e patch panel, and this is going to be the primary interface for all the studiohub, logic, everything. So what I did is I labeled, like, these are all your input channels: program, audition, telephone, external in control room, studio, and logic. It's all in there. So now the goal is to figure out how to mount that sucker, and then once it's mounted, fish all the wiring through and start terminating this rat's nest of cable. So that's what I'm doing right now. Okay, we got the patch panel in here now, and got all the cables pulled through the hole. So now the time-consuming, unpleasant business of terminating all those cables. However, through the magic of video technology, it will be done in, oh, I don't know, about 3 frames. Did I ever mention how much I hate Molex connectors? Just for the record, I hate Molex connectors. Just wanted to get that out of the way. I had to call it quits. I ran out of connector pins. Got 3 cables left to go. Also, we're missing a couple of ICs here, so I will order those and get some more pins, and then we begin the real fun task of doing level balancing. And then after that point, this thing should be pretty much ready to go in the case, and hopefully before too long after that we'll get some testing. So until next time, or at least until I get parts, I guess that's a wrap. As usual, it's coming down to the 11th hour to get all this stuff done. It's Sunday night. We have to be on the road tomorrow at about 10 a.m. or noon, something like that. But the board's done, the wiring's done. We have a lot of level problems we're going to have to fix on site, and that's just kind of the way it goes. But I got the new wiring harness put in. I still need to etch boards for that bottom tray, which is power supply logic and stuff for the control room sign and stuff like that. But it's coming along, slow but sure. There's the wiring. We're getting there. I'm going to be much happier when we're on site and running. So, we'll see you guys from the road.